today's Blade of History Beans, I'll take a quick look at the Peyote Ceremony in Native American culture. Native American lore tells the story of the origins of the Peyote Ceremony. A traveler lost in the desert, struggling with dehydration, lays down, fearful that he will not awaken. During his feverish dream, he hears a voice, but at first he cannot identify the speaker. Then he realizes the voice emanates from a cluster of grandfather peyote growing near his head. The peyote beckons the man to eat its fruit, and the man does so. Refreshed from consuming the cactus, the man is then guided by the grandfather peyote back to safety and his people. This, at least in some telling, is how the Peyote Ceremony originated. For tribal groups living in Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and further south in northern New Mexico, the Peyote Ceremony is regarded as a deeply religious experience, one that helps guide an individual to a greater understanding of loss, or perhaps a group of individuals to find answers for challenging problems. Peyote, which contains the psychedelic compound mescaline, grows naturally mostly in the Chihuahuan Desert of northern Mexico. I can't personally attest to the physical experience of ingesting peyote. For the purposes of this brief look at the Peyote Ceremony, I watched several videos. I know, for example, that peyote is bitter tasting, not something you would normally want to eat. It will cause nausea and sometimes vomiting. The more important effects, however, are the spiritual experience one has while on the drug. I'll place links to 3 videos I watched about the Peyote Ceremony in the comments below. If you want to gain greater insight into the Peyote Ceremony and its spiritual and cultural importance, the videos are an excellent resource. In the first video, a Navajo family struggles with the loss of their husband and father. Their native family on the reservation convene a peyote ceremony to help the family heal, to feel closer to each other and more in touch with the memory of the man they loved. I think I found this video to be the most moving of the 3 I'm listing. It brought into focus the notion that peyote is not just a hallucinogen, but for native cultures and for any who seek its power, a source of medicine, a way to heal both physically and spiritually. The second video documents the experience of a world traveler who seeks out peyote-like experiences in various cultures. He is hosted by a family in northern Mexico who act as his guides as he takes peyote, then rides on horseback with his guides through the hill country in the Chihuahuan Desert. He finds the experience both enjoyable and somewhat enlightening. If you're interested in peyote tourism, you might find this second video interesting. The third video is lengthy, about 90 minutes, and features a pair of native anthropologist types who recount not only their experiences with peyote, but also give a more technical overview of peyote's place in the Native American church. The video is informative of the spiritual lives of some Native Americans and of how the peyote ceremony evolved to what it is nowadays. If you're looking for an in-depth look at Native culture and efforts to sustain Native worship practices and the ways that they are trying to protect peyote growth in the wild, where irresponsible harvesting has decimated the species, then you will find this third video interesting. As for peyote's relationship with my book, Hunting Charm, there is good evidence that the Comanche, Kiowa, and other plains tribes used peyote in a ceremonial way. Though it's impossible to say if the peyote ceremony was something done with any regularity during the mid-19th century, as I suggest in my novel. Some sources say the practice of the peyote ceremony is a more recent development that started towards the late 19th or early 20th century. Likewise, I can't say with high confidence that peyote was used to help someone find their spirit animal. Spirit animals are, however, another important spiritual component in many native cultures, including the Comanche and Kiowa people. You could say I use a good deal of artistic license in today's chapter of Hunting Charm. It isn't meant to be disrespectful of native cultures. I've combined several elements found in native religious and cultural experience to tell a story. I don't want to offend anyone. That's it for today's brief look at the peyote ceremony on the contemporary Old West with B.F. Biles. Now I have the second half of chapter 16 of Hunting Charm, A Strange Dream. As always, if you like my content, I hope you'll hit the like and subscribe icons. Also, if you're interested in a copy of Hunting Charm, I'll place a link to my Amazon page where you can find copies of all my books. If you're interested in a signed copy of Hunting Charm or any of my books, you can leave a comment below and I can arrange to send you a copy. Here's chapter 16.2 of Hunting Charm. Hope to see you again next week on the Contemporary Old West with B.F. Biles. Hunting Charm, Chapter 16, Part 2, A Strange Dream. The descent down the winding trail took over an hour. When they arrived, a group of residents, mostly women and children, gathered and greeted the men with respectful bows and smiles. Brent and Matt dismounted, hats in hand, while Quanah greeted 3 different women, his wives. Finally, the chief turned and motioned them forward, introducing them in the Comanche language. The residents of the village nodded, their expressions neutral. Matt recalled Isate's warning that they should not expect love from the people. "You may pitch your tents between the creek and Quanah's lodge." Isate pointed at an ornately decorated teepee and a narrow stream beyond. "We will talk about the 2 fat brothers now." Isate motioned for Matt to follow. Brent found a shaded spot beneath a cottonwood and after pitching the tents, built a small campfire. Matt returned a few minutes later but said nothing of his conversation about the Baylor brothers. Instead, he crept into his tent, saying he needed time to think. Brent pulled a pot from his pack and started coffee. A group of children played nearby. They paid Brent little attention at first, but then one of the boys, a child of perhaps 6 or 7, dashed forward with a stick, mimicking an attack. Soon thereafter, the other boys and girls took their turn, some giggling, but others with grim expressions. At one point, a small girl, only 3 or 4 years old, waddled through the water brandishing a pointed stick. Bravely, the girl drew closer and closer until she stood only 2 feet from Brent. She smiled broadly and poked him with the spear. "You going to get me?" Brent feigned distress. The other children emerged from the brush and stood watching the exchange. The little girl continued her attack, giggling each time Brent cowered. Finally, she poked the stick bravely into Brent's chest. He clutched it between 2 fingers, tumbling off the log, playing dead. The little girl laughed in delight, dancing and clapping. One of the older boys trotted up and began scolding her. Brent couldn't be sure if the boy felt the girl was too friendly or the game too serious. The little girl stuck her tongue out at the boy, giggled again, and tottered away. As the sun reached the horizon, shading the clear skies in infinite blue, Matt awoke from his time to think and joined Brant, pouring himself some coffee. He stepped cautiously, stretching. Quanah didn't know much about the Baylor brothers, he said, mostly what I knew already. So we spent 4 days waiting to talk, killed a boy, and didn't learn anything. He didn't know anything about the Baylors, but he did have some information about Cecil Johnson. Did I mention how the Baylors told me there had been some sort of trouble at the Johnson ranch? They claimed Cecil Johnson's wife set fire to her family's home. It didn't make a lot of sense. It was another example of how those brothers had a dishonest recollection of things. At any rate, I guess the Kiowa have a settlement to the north of here. They're the ones saw Johnson, or the man that may be Johnson. It may be that the Baylor brothers were right about Johnson's place being burned out. Truth is, they may have done it themselves. The wife may be dead. Well, what about Cecil Johnson? Is he still alive? I asked about that. Matt sipped his coffee, pulling out his tobacco pouch. Roll us one. He flipped Brant the cloth bag. According to these Kiowas, Johnson wasn't killed. They saw 2 colored men traveling with a herd of mules and ponies, a wagon, and 2 children. You sure that's Johnson? Johnson had a hired man in Abilene. According to the Baylors, the Johnsons had 2 or 3 children. Being burned out would explain them moving. Quanah didn't say anything about a woman with him. That's why I say Johnson's wife may be killed. Okay, what else? Quanah's men said they were traveling west. Matt pulled his notepad from his pocket and thumbed through the pages. Johnson served in the military, Fort Union. We were over there a few years ago, right after the war, chasing that doctor who killed those boys. That was one sorry son of a bitch. Is that the man with the scatter gun? He peppered me good. Anyway, it looks like Johnson is heading west. California maybe, or Oregon. They have some open territory up that way. He may still have friends at Fort Union. So, we're gonna ride that way? It takes us the opposite way we were planning to go. Johnson's ranch is to the east, Creek territory. You're in charge. As the skies turned from glowing red to a rich shade of terracotta, a young Cherokee man carrying a smoldering torch appeared. In stumbling English, he said the celebration would start soon. They could already hear the rhythmic thud of a drum and the sinuous trill of a flute, both amplified by the Spanish skirts of Paladura Canyon. I reckon Quanah would find it unneighborly if we didn't join in. Brent felt nervous, as he always did before parties. This isn't optional, Brent. Plus, you're the honored guest. Peta Nocona has something for you, remember? Just eat and drink what they give you. Try to enjoy yourself. Isate said you're going to receive your spirit animal. What does that even mean? I guess we'll find out. They entered a central clearing with a blazing bonfire surrounded by teepees and a handful of wattle and daub structures. Quanah, with Isate by his side, motioned to a pair of sling chairs near the fire. To one side, a group of dancers wearing paint and ornate costumes stood talking. Other residents settled around the fire, some with chairs of their own or blankets. The dancers began circling, warming up, and the drummer began to sing, his voice meshing seamlessly with the flute and the rhythmic heartbeat of his drum. Quanah's wives and a pair of children, all wearing ornate clothing and solemn expressions, settled alongside Matt and Brent. Quanah lifted his hand. The drumming and singing stopped, and the conversation of the gathering crowd quieted. As Quanah spoke to the assemblage, a pair of younger men appeared and placed a gigantic headdress on his head and draped an enormous buffalo cape around his shoulders. The great chief spoke for several minutes. At times there were chuckles and a good deal of nodding in agreement. Then, with a sweep of his arm, Quanah motioned toward the teepee nearest the fire. Everyone turned. The drummer resumed the nearly inaudible beating heart. The teepee opened and Nocona appeared, followed by 3 elderly women. The old chief walked slowly and, with the help of his wives, settled into a sling chair. Isate appeared alongside Matt and Brant and translated as Quanah continued. "My father, Peta, grows old. The old man's papers said he died on the reservation of smallpox. He did not, though. He will die here with the Quahada. He has asked that no white man know of his death, save these 2. Peta asked them to hold this secret within their hearts." Matt and Brant both nodded their agreement, and Quanah, bowing slightly, moved back to his place alongside his wives. The crowd began conversing again, some of them peering curiously at Matt and Brant. For the next half hour, people moved freely around the fire, settling, socializing, and sharing food. Quanah's wives brought plates of dried fruit, corn, nuts, pemmican, and smoked meats. Matt nodded positively at the flavor of one of the treats. "It's deer or wild pig. Try some." Brant, recalling Matt's exhortation, took a bite and found the jerky surprisingly good. The musicians continued improvising, providing accompaniment to the sounds of conversation and laughter. Then, at some indiscernible signal, the drumming stopped. The conversation, likewise, dwindled slowly to inaudible murmurs. When the music started again, it was the flute only, the musician vocalizing through the instrument, creating chirps and growling tones that sounded vaguely like the call of birds or other wildlife. From the shadows, a solitary dancer appeared, circling gracefully. The performer wore circular arm shields and a headdress of gray feathers. He stopped before Quanah, balancing on one leg, pulling himself upward like a skilled ballet master. With a boom, the drum joined and the flute trilled. Gracefully, the dancer thrust his legs skyward, arms outstretched, head held high. Lizard tongue imitates the hawk, climbing, one claw holding his prey, the other reaching for the sky, Isate said. The dancer turned, still on one leg, the beat of the drum quickening. A pair of new dancers appeared. The hawk is greeted by the bear and the puma. The drummer began to sing while the new dancers, both shaking gourds, added sinuous rhythms to the steady beat. Brant felt a nudge and was handed a smoldering pipe. He considered passing it on, then he recalled Matt's advice. He raised the pipe and pulled the sweet smoke in, releasing it through his nose, enjoying the aroma. He took a second puff and felt some of the tension leave his back and shoulders. Despite himself, Brant smiled as he passed the pipe to Isate. Matt presented a bottle of Old McFarland's to Quanah. Soon, along with the bottle, gourds filled with a milky brew that Isate explained was made from corn circled the assembled crowd. The music, along with the drink and smoke, transported Brant to a more comfortable place. Soon he was grinning broadly. When a fourth dancer emerged, dressed magnificently with feathered armbands that resembled the wings of a fantastic bird, he sat rapt. He realized that a people he had always regarded as savages were, in truth, the creators of a magnificent cultural heritage. The new dancer wore wrist and ankle bands with tiny bells attached, adding a new element to the music. The drumming grew more intense, quickening. The sounds and the movements of the dancers, along with the bells, flute, bass drum, and mournful singing coalesced, and, along with Isate's narration, provided an entertaining show. "Quanah says to eat this." Isate presented Brant with a bowl containing a small amount of green mush and an ornately carved wooden spoon. "What is it?" Brant looked curiously at the mixture. "Peyote. It will make you sick. Then that will pass, and the cactus will lead you, with Peta's help, to your spirit animal." Brant looked at Peta and once more imagined the man winked at him. "Is everyone eating this?" Brant asked. "It is only for you," Isate said. "When you are sick, do not worry. It will pass quickly." For a moment, Brant considered returning the bowl to Quanah, but then, once again, he recalled Matt's words. Gathering a bit of the greenish mush with the spoon, he placed it into his mouth. The taste was strong, bitter, and repellent, but he forced himself to swallow. He was handed a gourd of corn liquor to wash away the bitter taste. Isate nodded and took the bowl. "Now you need only relax. Soon you will find your spirit animal." As the dance continued, Brant noticed many of the villagers looking at him, their eyes glittering, reflecting the light from the bonfire. He shifted uneasily. At first everything felt normal. He was handed the pipe again, drew from it and passed it. Then the bottle of whiskey came and went, though he wasn't sure if he tasted it or not. The fire had taken on a life of its own, moving like a fifth dancer, multiple arms darting and flickering on all sides. "You okay?" Matt's query echoed in Brant's brain. He leaned forward, his stomach churning, and vomited into the dirt. A woman appeared instantly, cleaning the mess with a bit of straw, then disappearing. Brant peered at Matt, wanted to say something, but before he could speak, two dancers, the puma and the bear, appeared before him. A moment later they parted, and the ornately dressed bird extended a hand, feathered body silhouetted against the bonfire. "Come with me," the bird said. Instinctively, Brant reached out and took the dancer's hand. Without sound or effort, they were airborne, the music fading, the dancers, fire, and assembled crowd growing smaller beneath him. Miles away on the canyon rim, looking down at the teepees and distantly glowing bonfire, the magnificent bird spoke. "Your spirit is here." Her voice swirled in Brant's mind like the jingling of bells. "It is the puma, a powerful spirit. There is only one such. Pape said it would be so." Brant turned slowly, and there on a rock by his side rested a gigantic mountain lion, eyes glowing in the moonlight. "Do not fear your spirit." Brant turned, but the speaker, whoever it was, had disappeared. Hadn't someone else been there with him? He drew his pistol, squaring himself as the mountain lion snarled. The roar of the wild animal filled him with fear, but he held his ground. Was this a wild animal before him, or Peta? He couldn't say. The antelope turned gracefully, fleeing him, but too slow. With digging claws, he grasped the frantic deer's hind quarters, pulling the prey to the ground, holding the animal as it suffocated. The deer shivered, eyes rolling. A hot spurt of blood filled his mouth. He feasted, gorging himself, then dragged the carcass into a stand of oak brush. Sated, he returned to his lair, moving slowly, belly full, grooming to remove the antelope's blood from his fur. As he felt himself drift off to sleep, Pape entered. "This is yours." The old warrior draped a circular pendant made of yucca strings around Brant's neck. "This hunting charm will lead you to your prey." "This is mine?" Hunter gazed at the dream catcher. "Our spirits are the same," Pape whispered. He woke the following morning somehow back inside his tent. He crawled outside, head reeling, wondering if he might find a bit of whiskey to ease his pounding skull. What had happened the night before? Stumbling to the creek, Brant rinsed his face in the trickling stream, his attention held rapt for a moment by the bit of redness from his beard curling away in wispy lines. Was it blood from the deer? What deer? He had been sitting by the fire, then what had happened next? There had been a mountain lion and an antelope feasting on warm meat. The metallic taste of blood instinctively reached to his chest. The circular pendant woven from yucca strings hung there, just as he recalled from his dream. Had his head ever hurt this badly? He drank deeply, the chilly water easing his parched throat. He considered shedding his clothes for a bath, but recalling the children from the previous day, decided against it. He splashed his face a few more times, then trudged unsteadily back up the embankment. He found a pot of coffee in an enameled cup sitting on a rock near the campfire. He sat down and went over what had happened in his mind. He recalled smoking a pipe, sage and tobacco, shots of whiskey, and milky corn beer. Then there was the vile green mush none of the others had eaten from the bowl. His flight with the flaming bird seemed connected to the, what had Isate called it, peyote. He recalled being sick. Then the dancer had approached, and together they had flown. "Well, you look like you're feeling good this morning." Matt appeared from somewhere. Had he been there all along? "What the hell happened last night?" "Well, sir, according to the host, you found your spirit animal." "What the hell does that mean? Did I go somewhere?" "If you did, I was drunker than I thought. We had to drag your ass back to camp after you passed out. You ain't no small man, Hunter." "I passed out? I didn't go anywhere?" "No, sir. You threw up, then you curled up there by the fire. You woke up for a minute when that old feller, Peta Nocona, gave you that necklace." He said this was a hunting charm. Brant displayed the intricately woven pendant. "No, sir, Pete didn't say anything, just hung that deal on your neck and left for his teepee. Quanah told me his father gave you the necklace because he plans to die soon. I reckon the Comanche know when they're gonna die. Makes no sense to me. I reckon a man knows when he's sick and old. How do you figure a man knows when he's about to die, though? Interesting. You think I'll know when my time is coming?" Matt stopped for a long moment, pondering his question, then said, "You know, it was curious the way Nocona looked at you. Gave me an odd feeling, to tell the truth. These native folks have strange ways." "Why, what did he do?" "He waved his hand over your head." Matt paused, looking out across the canyon. His expression changed to one of deep consideration. Then he said, It wasn't that he looked at you so much as, well, he kind of had that same expression you get sometimes, like he was determined to get something done and wasn't nothing gonna stop him. Then Matt paused a second time, then spoke in a mystical and perhaps mocking tone. Well, he touched you, and I swear this is gonna sound funny, but when he put his hands on you, now you understand it was dark, but when he put his hands on you, there was this spark, maybe? Matt chuckled. I'm just playing with you. I didn't see anything. There was no spark. The old man put that deal around your neck, and that was it. Brant looked uneasily at his partner, his thoughts returning to the previous evening. In the dream, or whatever it had been, Nocona had given him something more than just the circular charm woven with strings. The second gift had been less palpable, nothing one could reach out and touch. Still, the revelation, the bit of insight Nocona had imparted, had been profound. Despite Brant's hungover state, the morning seemed brighter somehow, and as he looked around, Brant's relationship with the world seemed clearer, less uncertain. I spoke to those braves that saw Cecil Johnson come through here a week or so ago. I guess some of the Kiowa folks were at that deal last night. We need to get on the trail. Brant, rather than feeling annoyed by the prospect of a butt-bruising day on horseback, recalled something else Peta Nocona had said to him in his dream. The charm will lead you to your prey. I'm ready, let's do this. Brant stood and stretched himself. Then he looked at Matt for a long moment, grinning. Damn, head hurts, but dang if it ain't a nice morning. Matt gave Brant a long look. Something about his sometimes sullen partner seemed different. Matt saw something in the rangy cowboy that he hadn't seen in some time, though he couldn't put a finger on it. Plus, Brant was right. The morning was glorious. The escarpments of the canyon, coral, salmon, and ochre seemed especially colorful in the light cresting the horizon, while the skies, deep blue, streaked with wisps of white, looked like an impossibly calm lake, vast and infinite. An eagle soared far above, solitary and majestic, turning, diving and wheeling in the air before disappearing behind the rim of the canyon. Matt had been wondering if Brant had lost something to the booze. Over the past year or more, it had seemed more and more like the man he loved as a brother had been replaced by a morose drunk who stumbled through his days and tossed restlessly through the night. On this morning, however, Matt saw something different. Not the return of the old Brant, but something similar. He hoped it would last. Are you just going to stand there with your mouth open looking at the sky? No, all right then. Let's hit the trail.